Quayle is the author of 9 books, was one of the founders of the modern-day preparedness movement, and has been in the precious metals business for over 35 years. Steve has been ahead of his times in detailing future events long before they appear on most analysts' radar screens. For the past 20 years, Steve has articulated the need for Americans to be aware of bioterrorism and weapons of mass destruction. Upon publication of Breathe No Evil, he upstaged the mainstream media by years, spelling out the detailed effects of bioterrorism. Prior to the book's release, Steve predicted that a large-scale chemical or biological attack in a major city was imminent. 3 weeks later, a cult group released nerve gas in Tokyo subway system. In 1999, Steve Quayle stated that a new terrorist crusade would begin with radical Islam launching us into World War III. Steve continues to shout from the rooftops his concern for potential massive loss of life resulting from the lack of civil defense and preparation throughout our society. Welcome, Steve Quayle.
Steve, how are you?
Number one, it's nice to be on with you guys. Number two, I was listening to your intro, and I think what people have better understand is the big picture. We have moved from a constitutional republic into a de facto dictatorship. These are my words, so, I'll take the heat for them. And when the American people, who now number 49 million or 49 million plus are on food stamps, the middle class has been effectively wiped out. Wall Street has pillaged Main Street to the tune of quadrillions of dollars, and I'm using the right numbers. Years ago, gentlemen, I made this statement when most people were claiming that the derivatives market, I'm talking a decade ago, was only 100, 200 billion, and then it rose to 500 to a trillion. I said, we are at a quadrillion dollar number with collateralized debt obligations, mortgage-backed securities. In other words, everything that everybody owns has been hawked, mortgaged, packaged, sold, resold, and totally put out as a good financial instrument. And now the obvious nature of the degree and the depth of the fraud that was perpetrated is affecting everything and everyone. We're in a realm now where quantitative easing, meaning the Treasury has to print money, and for the record, it was stated by Ben Bernanke that if necessary, they would drop, they meaning the Fed, would drop, and the Treasury would drop billions, if not all the money that was necessary from helicopters, just dump out $100 bills, and that's how he got his name, Helicopter Ben. Saying that, it's tragic to me that the National Defense Authorization Act, 1867, I heard you talking about SOPA and PIPA and everything else that's out there, is war on the American citizens. Meanwhile, the Russians, the Chinese, the Middle East, especially Iran, and other nations, North Korea, Venezuela, all of these nations are making it clear that we are at the brink of World War III. Now, we've been there before, and guys, I wrote a book years and years ago, almost 20 years ago. It was called Blueprint for Survival, and it basically taught about how we deal with all these different threats during the Cold War, after the breakup of the Soviet Union, the Berlin Wall coming down. I said when the Berlin Wall fell that now we've got everybody who used to be a spy on the eastern side of the curtain coming through to the west, and I think that's what's happened. So we're in the most perilous time, and kicking about, talking about every single person hearing this broadcast should be on their senators and congressmen who voted for NDAA 1867, and if they do not add additional language to exempt American citizens and put us under the due process clause and all of the guarantees, habeas corpus, etc., then you might as well just kiss your life, I'll use that definition right now, goodbye, because these entities, and I won't even so much go, and I won't call them humans, they're absolutely bringing a net down. The total information awareness, the necessity of the government to know everything, every single thing that's designed is in anticipation, meaning the police state, what Alex Jones has warned about for years in all of his videos. You know, we're dealing with the Hegelian dialectic. The Hegelian dialectic is simple. Basically, you create a problem, you provide the solution, and in providing the solution, you bring about the desired results. And now all the conspiracy theories that everyone's been warning about for years and years and years, some of us decades, are no longer conspiracy theories. And you've got the Republicans, quote, that are supposed to conservatives fighting against the only guy that's been saying the common theme of true conservatism, Ron Paul. And you've got CFR member Newt Gingrich, and you've got Romney, who proposed the original health care program that Obama picked up on. You've got the complete disenfranchisement, and it's basically a three-ring circus. And my answer to everybody is, look, you got to look for the circus and understand it's entertainment. If your life is valuable to you, then you've got to step up, you've got to speak up, and you've got to put your money where your mouth is. You run ads in papers, buy ads on this radio station, and start getting people mobilized and organized to say, we're not going to allow the suspension of the Constitution. Remember this, every man who is in uniform that has sworn to defend the Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, they have to understand that the Constitution was abrogated on the 15th of December or whatever, when it was signed by the President. There was some question when it was actually signed, but I heard you also say in your opening statements that, well, we know that Obama had some concerns. Yeah, basically that's grandstanding because it's an election year, and I, for one, would be surprised if there isn't somebody brought out of the back of the woods, George Bush, or there's a Romney-Paul running ticket or something. Something's going to change really dramatically. But the question for everyone to understand and I think focus on is what's going on in the Middle East.
But even if they change the language, so to speak, so it does not apply to U.S. citizens, it's still a problem. I mean, when you
absolutely,
think about it, the Constitution applies to people who are here other than just citizens.
Well, the idea is this, okay? It is anti-constitutional, and every single one, and I want to make this clear, I am on record as stating that 93 senators signed American citizens who have been taxed, their writ of execution. How dare they take our rights away, and yet they dare. And then if you speak up about it, if you stand up against it, you're now the terrorist. And meanwhile, every jihadi in the world is being allowed in through the southern border. And we've got so many problems that the hypocrisy, and I would say this, the pre-planned destruction of the United States is underway. And if people believe that the pre-planned destruction isn't underway, then they better wake up.
And why is it being done? What's your understanding of that?
Well, I think there's the group that's Luciferian Brotherhood, the people that are the international bankers that Rockefeller was thanking the media over for keeping all of this secret for all these years. And I think that most people have got to understand the globalists want a one-world government. You've just heard that India and China are going to biometrically identify all their citizens. We now have the whole plan in the United States. We have our emails being listened to, our phone, everything that we basically think, do, and say is in the electronics that are in the back gate or the back rooms. They want controlling us all. So the answer specifically is an international group of elitists that want a one-world government, a one-world religion, and a one-world economic system. When the world crashes, by the way, this is all being done by design, there will be a call for a global currency. There will be a call for a one-world currency. And obviously, the technology already exists to basically pretty much implement that, but they need a giant cause in order to bring about their effect. So it's my contention that World War III is brewing. Whenever the Middle East does finally blow up, it's going to bring about a false world war. When I say it'll be a real war, real people will die, but then you're going to have the globalists come on the scene with supposed new treaties and new plans. And this fulfills the biblical prophecies concerning the role of the Antichrist. And by the way, there's a new book out called Petros Romanus, and if anybody has been following a lot of the ancient history series that's on television, well, you're talking about the final pope coming on the scene, and he's what's known as the Black Pope, and it's a fascinating subject because Saint Malachi, a priest in the 14th century, pretty much had a vision of every pope through this, and so the last pope, this is taking the world right now, their attention, coupled in with all the weird weather. See, all this stuff is not a political solution. When I go on, and you guys, I think, listen to me on Coast to Coast, or when I go on Omega Man on Blog Talk Radio, and we go to the #1 show out of 54,925 shows, it's the people, not just Americans, but it's the people in the world that are saying, how is it that all of these Middle East countries started having revolutions almost instantaneously? How is it that Moscow had its first real political riots disputing Putin? Now, how is it that all these assassinations in the background are taking place? And how is it that now it seems like, and I would say this, it seems like the Islamic Brotherhood and radical Islam is taking over the world? Well, that's by design. And there are absolute historic documents that said that the international elite, secret societies, would pit the Christians, the Jews, and the Muslims against each other, and when they had all killed each other off, it is absolutely the time for Lucifer to appear. So when people try and look at a physical world only and not deal with the spiritual, in the spiritual I'm talking about the prophetic spiritual. Years ago, you guys made the statement, almost 20 years ago, I said, you'll know things are getting very close to the end when all the world's major volcanoes start to go off simultaneously. And just the other day on the island, one of the islands in Indonesia, 25 of their volcanoes have come active, and at my last count, it was 106 of some of the most famous volcanoes in the world, if not all of them, coming active.
Yes, Steve, you're talking about the inevitability, it seems like, of World War III. There's a threat from Iran that if we enter the Gulf of Hormuz, the Straits of Hormuz, that they may attack one of our ships. But I don't know that I've actually heard that from Iranian media. I hear that from our media, but I'm not sure that's true. If you think back to the sinking of the Lusitania, which got us into World War I, that was arranged by Churchill and Wilson. That was intentional, to get us into the war. And, of course, the Gulf of Tonkin incident was phony. That was staged to get us into the Vietnam War. Seems to me like this whole thing is playing out again in the Straits of Hormuz. What do you think?
Well, absolutely, and look why we're in Afghanistan. You just spoke of Vietnam. If you look at Vietnam from the time it was French Indochina and even prior to that, when the Brits ruled Malaysia, I mean, we're talking about, and especially in Afghanistan and Vietnam, the whole thing was about how the secret entities of the world pretty much fund their operations through drug profits. And I've interviewed, you guys, hundreds and hundreds of people over the years that know what's going on there, know what's going on in Afghanistan, and we think that we're fighting a noble cause. Listen, anybody who knows basic history knows there has to be an economic angle to all wars. And the economic angle in Afghanistan is control of heroin. The economic angle in Vietnam was the control of heroin from the triangle, the good night, not the Bermuda Triangle, I keep going, but the Burmese Triangle. And so the thing is that we're in a World War III setup. Heck, World War III is good. One of the most internationally famous bankers said, we make more in one day of war than we make in a year of peace. General Smedley Butler basically said it was about the military-industrial complex, and if you look at all the money that went into Iraq, I'm telling you this, after all the hundreds of thousands of Iraqi men, women, and children, and the tens of thousands of U.S. soldiers who have lost their lives, the real number, by the way, nothing you are told at this point is true unless it comes from eyewitnesses or people that are willing to lay down their life to tell the truth, because we've allowed ourselves to be mind-controlled by what I call vomit brokers. That's the mainstream news media, and that's why your radio show and my radio shows and all the shows that are out there, people know they're not getting the truth. So I would tell everyone, if you want to have an education in reality, turn off mainstream media. Just start Googling. Just start going on the Internet. That's why they want SOPA. That's why they want PIPA, because when you control information, knowledge is power, and the power brokers don't like the fact that now they're having to deal with an informed public as opposed to just a deaf, dumb, and stupid population.
So, Steve, where does Barack Obama fit into this matrix?
Well, first of all, he's the man for the hour, and I believe that he fulfills prophecy because in Barack Obama's own words, even from the 72nd day of his occupying the White House, he basically said he was finished. Now, a lot of us have heard him make statements, about how blessed Islam is and watch what I'm going to do for the my Muslim brothers and all that stuff. And look, here's what I'm saying. The people have got to understand when he was on, I think it was either Face the Nation or Meet the Press with George Stephanopoulos, actually, if it were not for Mr. Stephanopoulos, he would have said my Muslim faith. Now, why is that important?
Because well, he did say that. He was corrected.
And he was corrected, but listen, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And the fact is that what I'm trying to say here is if you go to Albert Pike, people deny this, but in his letter to Mazzini, the Third World War, people go look it up yourself. The head man that wrote Morals and Dogma, one of the most powerful Masons, now most Masons don't even know this document exists, in a letter to Mazzini, basically said they were going to generate the Third Great War, and it would be the war between Muslims, Christians, and this was, by the way, prior to World War I, World War II, and World War III. So if you want to know the history of wars, wars are engineered by very powerful men. The profits made in wartime are horrendous and just beyond most people's capacity to count even. But the point is the toll in human suffering. And look, I'm no Pollyanna and I'm no pacifist, but I can tell everybody this, that you've got to understand that we're coming into the most radical, dangerous, upsetting, tumultuous, and perilous time in history. It's just like we're watching the weather. How can one place in Goodnight, Alaska, in the Valdez area, get so much snow and then the entire northern plains be without it for a month? How can, we see all these weather strange anomalies. We're hearing sounds around the world that sound like trumpets in some areas and like the plate shifting in others. How about all the strange anomalies where people are seeing stuff falling out of the skies? Now, look, this is all documented, but the answer to all this, in my opinion, is that the person that will take the time to do their homework, they can basically see that there's enough evidence to show you that the matrix of madness that's on mainstream TV, that's what I call it, is designed to entertain and designed to basically television program you so that we have no critical thinking skills. It's just like, look, how much student debt is out there. Look at all the college graduates that have horrendous student debt. By the way, it's the next big balloon to break, student debt. It's pretty close to $1 trillion. Commercial real estate, that's going down. How can you occupy buildings? I'm saying all these things are stacking up. And it's, in my opinion, based on 2002 Bernanke's speech, that the next thing Americans are going to see is a 40% devaluation. That's why people who are wise are looking at the precious metals. Look, China, India, Japan, all the Orient and what we would call Asia Major, not just Asia Minor, are headed into metals. Russia's increased their gold holdings dramatically. And if it were not for the Chinese still going along with the buying our treasury debt, we would be in big trouble. Outside of a jubilee is a time period when all debts are forgiven. That's the only way you could get rid of the debt, but then you just start over. Years ago, I made the statement. This was before we even began trading with China at large. 20 years ago, I said, what we're going to do is the internationalists and the elitists will destroy America's economy. They'll be able to build up China's economy. Then they'll start issuing credit cards to China and to be able to charge the Chinese, the new Chinese who have come out of absolute poverty into a new form of wealth, to charge them interest and start the whole thing over again. I actually had an elite banker one time tell me, he says, Steve, we pretty much plundered the 300 million Americans. He said, now we're going after the 1.2 billion Chinese. And he said,
what's your take on this upcoming election, specifically the Republican candidates?
I don't believe there is any Republican candidate outside of Ron Paul. I think they're all fake. I think Gingrich is fake. And by the way, you remember his contract with America. I think Romney is absolutely nothing but Obama, Obama Jr. Listen, they just released a 200-page, Goodnight dossier on Romney, I think that McCain had put together, and that's on the internet. What you're seeing right now is splitting the Republican vote, and you're seeing the fact that outside of something happening dramatically, I don't believe there's anybody strong enough to take on Obama by themselves. So I think that whether it was Donald Trump checking the water to maybe go in, and whether it was the situation where you had Santorum, no chance, you've got Romney, some chance, and I could actually see a Romney-Ron Paul ticket, because that would take the liberal Republicans and conservative Republicans say it's better than what we've got. But I can tell you this, it's my statement over and over and over. People looking for a political solution to the problems that are in America now are looking in the wrong direction. These are people that are absolutely, meaning the international elite, are absolutely determined to bring about the destruction of the United States. And I made a little poem up, if you will. Rape, pillage, and plunder, the United States is going under. Look at Greece, look at Portugal, look at Ireland, Iceland, Spain. Look at what's going on in Britain even. Look at what's going on around the world, the sheer amount of debt. How is it that what used to function no longer functions? Most people might be interested to know that even when the Federal Reserve was set up initially, its charter was to expire in 2012. The word occult means hidden. To occlude something means to hide it. So the unseen hand that's been basically politically active, financially active, and in their surveillance activity. Look, we have FEMA camps all over the world. I remember taking heat with Alex talking about that stuff 10 years ago. We're telling people that, look, they're going to put us on rail cars and ship us out there. That never happened in America. Yet we're all the gun owners who, by the way, are now considered terrorists. We're all the veterans. We're all the people who should have been standing up saying NDAA 1867, no way. Occupy Wall Street, guess who's funding that? The majority of it's coming from the liberal left. So the left-right paradigm no longer, in my opinion, is valid. I believe that we're dealing with the end-time spirituality. Look, I've written, 9 books on this stuff, and everything from genetic Armageddon, which means the tampering with the human genome. People mock that. I wrote about biological and chemical weapons, and now we've got the statement that people have designed the perfect flu, bird flu, that has a 90% kill ratio. 10 years before that announcement, I was saying, look, these guys are reconstituting the Spanish flu of 1918. Nobody could be bothered. So what I tell people is say, look, if you choose to be dumb unto death, then do that at your own peril. But you better understand that everything you've known, everything you've worked hard for, and everything you had any expectations for anybody who has kids and grandkids, look at the world they're getting. And I think it's tragic that, again, there is no, I want to make this clear because I'm not evading your question, there is no political solution. And I believe this. I believe that America is going to get absolutely devastated because even in all of the, when you talk to, and over the years I've talked to so many people from the foreign military services to foreign intelligence. As a researcher, I have spent a lot of time interviewing different people, different places in the country, and I can tell you this, they all just laugh, especially the Russians and especially some of the other people I've talked to, at the stupidity of Americans, For instance, you guys probably don't know this, but the Stasi, the head of the East German Stasi, Marcus Wolf, was hired by the former Department of Homeland Security to set up internal controls. He was the foremost Eastern European spy master. Guess who else was? Yevgeny Primakov. Primakov was former head of KGB for, the Middle East and other things, and he was on record stating one time, he said, you spend trillions to fight us, now you spend millions to hire us. So
imagine the irony. Steve, we're coming up on a break here. It's about 1:30. We're on WNJC, 1360 AM, broadcasting in the southern New Jersey and Philadelphia area. Our guest today is Steve Quayle. And if you haven't figured out by now, Steve has a lot of strong opinions and knowledge about what's going on. Billy, where do we want to take it now?
Yeah, Steve, I think we're pretty much in agreement that there's no political solution. When you look at the candidates, even if there was a quote, great candidate, the system is not letting anybody, it's not going to generate the type of people that are needed to pull us out of this tailspin we're in. So, given that, I mean, what do you see as happening in the next several years, and what do you think people should be doing?
Well, I think the first thing people should be doing is understand that if they look at the metaphor of the day, the Italian cruise ship where everybody was partying hardy, we used to say rearranging the deck chair on the Titanic. I think people should absolutely understand that they are at major risk from cyber attack in their financial accounts. And I will go on record as saying this. Look at the S&P, Standard & Poor's, look at the Dow Jones. Nothing has performed in the past decade better than gold and silver. Now, obviously, we were told it's a barbaric relic and everything, so people had better learn that the rest of the world understands that paper money is only worth the paper it's written on. Even Barack Obama has made that statement. He said it's all an illusion. So they better be getting some gold, physical gold and silver in hand, not like even Gerald Celente, where he had his market. Listen, you guys, when MF Global failed, that was a failure of the entire futures clearinghouses to basically say that your money and your metals or whatever commodity you have stored with them is no longer safe. So I coined a term a long time ago. People listen to it and they repeat it now, but if you can't touch it, you don't own it. It doesn't matter what somebody says. It matters, can you touch it, can you own it? I think that people better start looking to store food. And when I say store food, I mean buy food that's designed that if there's a disruption, in the economy for whatever reason, false flag attack, a real attack, you've got somewhere to go and something to fall back on. First of all, I made the statement, too, and I'm serious about this, that there is nothing that any of us can do. Here's a proverb from the wisest man in the world, Solomon. He said, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do?
Okay.
By the way, you guys, this isn't unusual. When I do talk radio, and even when I was on 3 hours a day on my own show for 15 years, satellites would go down, people would mess around, so it's really nothing unusual. I've been on coast to coast and had entire satellite channels locked out in certain areas of the country, mostly the East Coast, by the way.
It must be because of the traffic or something. Well, as a matter of fact, you were on with John B. Wells on Coast to Coast about 10 days ago. I got to say, that was a terrific show.
Well, thank you very much. And for people that we may lose each other, but my website is important for people to see because I think I have the cutting-edge news daily. It's Steve Quayle, QUAYLE.com, STEVEQUAYLE.com, and they click on the big Q, and I get real-time info coming from all over the world, and I think it will help people to see what's going on. And it's obviously with SOPA, guys like me will be gone. Guys like Alex Jones will be gone. But I think everybody had better call their senators and say, no, no, no. No SOPA, no PIPA, nothing like that. And absolutely raise a fit. And obviously, you were mentioning one of the news, Wikipedia went black. So did Wired.com. That's probably the leading computer technology magazine on the Internet. They blocked out all their headlines and said, here's the reason why.
Well, good. At least maybe this will get people's attention who otherwise are not really paying attention.
I tell people if they don't pay attention, they're going to pay with their lives. Listen, we're in a technologically decadent society. We now have machines, and the transhumanism movement, which is what I talk about, and some of the stuff John B. Wells and I talked about, is people become less and less necessary. And if anybody thinks this idea of decreasing the world's population by 90 to 95% is BS, go look up the Georgia Guidestones. Georgia Guidestones. Because the mouthpieces and the prophets for the New World Order have absolutely stated in no uncertain terms that, 90% of the world's population has to die. And so when you're talking about biological pathogens, when I wrote my book, Breathe No Evil, nobody was talking about that except Richard Preston in The Hot Zone and Laurie Garrett in The Coming Plague. And in those days, it was absolutely not on anybody's radar screen. I actually wrote a book. I have not published it yet. It's called Lucifer's Luggage, Suitcase Nukes in America. I can only tell you guys this, that whenever I used to talk about suitcase nukes in America, immediately people would say there was no such thing. The night Alexander Lebed, he used to be Boris Yeltsin's national security advisor and also the governor of Siberia, the night he was, quote, had a helicopter accident. I think I was on Coast to Coast either that night or night before, or after, forgive me, either during the night or the night after, and I said he was absolutely assassinated. His brother then stated he was assassinated. It's the same thing with Dr. Quayle in the MOD, Ministry of Defense. He was murdered, and all we heard were inquests. No, he was suicided. Well, yet how can his body be in one place, his hands tied behind his back, then his hands not tied, and he was on record, you guys, Dr. David Quayle, as worried about that he was going to be murdered. Why have 100 of the most famous biological scientists, molecular biologists, immunologists, virologists been murdered? Simple, because the weapon of choice is going to be a biological pandemic that is intentionally released across the world. And now you've got people fighting over should they release the formula for how they did it on the Internet.
And it does say in the Georgia Guidestones that the population of the world should be no more than 500 million, which is an enormous reduction. But also the publications of groups like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, and the private papers and books of people like Rockefeller, Kissinger, and other members of the Council of Foreign Relations have flat out said that the population needs to be reduced. The one thing I didn't know is that a lot of our foreign aid that we've been giving out for many years has strings attached to it. So when this foreign aid goes to third world countries, they have to undergo forced sterilizations. They have to open up a certain number of abortion clinics. You know, you talk about cultural imperialism. If that isn't a reason for these smaller countries to hate the U.S., I can't think of another one.
Well, I can tell you one of them, bottled water, because a lot of the plastics are leaching into the water, and then bottled. And I was the first guy to talk about that. Xenoestrogens. Okay, in other words, men. If you look, it's a matter of fact. Men's sperm count are going down. Men's male pattern baldness is increasing. These are not just just the lunatic fringe crowd. This is pure science, or excreted pharmaceuticals. If you remember, with the advent of the birth control pill, how many women who, were taking birth control pills, excreted pharmaceuticals cannot be taken out of municipal water supplies. You get too much estrogen as a guy. They have a statement in the Orient, no soy for a boy, and you no longer have the ability to reproduce. So we are being, if you will, through vaccines and through the air we breathe, chemtrails. I don't know if many of the people you guys both know, but you still can't convince people that something's wrong when, according to the Hopi prophecies of the Hopi Indians, the end of the age comes when the cobwebs cover the sky. This isn't just condensation trails. This is chemical trails that are being chemicals like ethylene dibromide and all of these barium compounds and all these different genetic binders, even human red blood cells, are being found. The best website on the internet for that is Carnicom, CARNICOM.com, Carnicom, CARNICOM.com. But see, people still don't get it. And then they wonder why everybody's sick, the respiratory diseases, the history of the United States, and in my book, Breathe No Evil. By the way, all my books are only available on my internet site. I did that because I got so tired of, censors saying, well, we'll publish this if you'll just do this and tone it down a little, Steve. I said, no, thank you. You guys tone it down and let the people that want to be spoon-fed lies read the lies. I'll deal with the truth. And that's why I publish all my own books and print them and ship them off my website.
So, Steve, you were mentioning with the water about the estrogen levels in people. So the estrogen levels are going up?
Yes.
I guess that means, and what's happening to testosterone in men? I mean, one look around most areas in this country, my take is that it's down to pretty much nothing.
Right, and even the sperm count's down. What happens when your sperm count? Well, you have sperm motility issues, and that means that you've got issues with reproduction. Meanwhile, what is it? Look at who's having lots of children. They don't basically suffer from the same issues that we suffer from, the water we drink, the food we eat, and the air we breathe. Now, it's important for people to understand this, that eugenics is really, really in effect. And now with some of the medical proposals that are going forward, people being denied medical treatment because of age and everything. Look, the societies that were the greatest were the ones that honored their elderly, not basically figuring ways to whack them. As Amsterdam, by the way, has just passed a rule that if you're depressed, you can request suicide. I don't know if you guys know that.
No.
So, the point that I'm trying to make is it's eugenics. The idea is this, that the international elite, the CFR, the Bilderbergers, all these secret people, Jesus said the love of money is the root of all evil. By inference, if you state the control of money is the control of all evil, then you can understand that by generating a problem, no matter what the problem is, the world's going, to blow up, and then you initiate a war to take out everybody you don't want, and then the people that are left standing, so to speak, then they can be, quote-unquote, re-educated. You want to live? Then we become serfs, and that's a word I coined a number of years ago, techno-serfs.
That's a good segue into what I wanted to ask you. How, in terms of our government relative to the people, how aggressive do you think this government is going to get to the people regarding First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, things like that?
Well, and I want to share this from four-star generals I've talked to, from retired people in the three-letter agencies, and I'm talking people who had the military equivalent of being very, very high up in three-letter agencies. I think we all know the three-letter agencies that are in the intelligence community. They're going to become totally aggressive after the election, big time. The MAAC report that Alex Jones has talked about, the Department of Homeland Security. I mean, I ran through it. Veterans, if you're a veteran, you're on the red list. If you're a gun owner, you're on the red list. If you complain and write letters to your senator, the red list are the people that are going to be not just put into FEMA camps, but look, people said, well, there are, 600 million guns in America, or whatever the number is. Yeah, but people don't understand that George Bush Sr. gave a lot of the U.S. military bases that were designed during the during the Cold War years, and had underground facilities. A lot of those were given over to NATO. So, though, if you recognize how many people in the U.S. military are always talking about being given the questionnaire, will you fire on American citizens? The answer to that is absolutely. As Marines have told a I guess there's no such thing as former Marines, but a Marine friend of mine, he said, sir, we will do what we are ordered to do. We're soldiers. And the guy who was a decorated military Marine, he said, even killing your own citizens that's unconstitutional, and then said, sir, we'll do what we're ordered to do. So what I think, when I say how aggressive, if I use the word total, I mean there's nothing that can be added to it. Total aggression. I think that's why they want SOPA. I think once the Internet shuts down, the radios go off, and if there is an electromagnetic pulse, people won't know what's going on. And you know what's sad? When we see what's going on in this country and the silent majority, we're always told that there are 60 million supposedly Bible-believing Christians in this country. And I can say this, they cannot be, or they would not allow the absolute abrogation of faith. And when I say abrogation of faith, there are some things that are right. God created man to be free. He created him to be his own, not at the expense of anything, but he gave man dignity, he gave him purpose, meaning, and now the people that hate God, and make no mistake about it, this is a spiritual fight. They absolutely want the end of all believers who believe in the living God or the Lord Jesus. I'm not bashful about that. You can say anything about anybody you want. You can be profane on ABC and have little kids infer the four-letter words. You can be wicked. You can be absolutely, totally this. Tebow gets mocked. Tim Tebow gets mocked when he kneels in prayer and thanks God that he wasn't aborted, and his face stands out as a testimony against the spiritual barrenness and hatred for Jesus Christ in America. Meanwhile, you have Muslims that are allowed to pray by the hundreds and close the streets down in Brooklyn. What's wrong with that? Well, listen, there will no longer be a separation of church and state, because in this country we are headed for, and I say this, a universal caliphate. The caliphate means that the Muslims' desire for world domination, they've already said they're going to do it. I've been told now, and I've been sent some copies of it, where in God We Trust, even on dollar bills, is people are stamping, evidently Muslims, saying, no God but Allah. Well, I can tell you this. In history, every single civilization. You want to see where we are? Read The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. You want to see what happened to them? It's history. Want to see what happened to Greece? The point is that nobody believes anything anymore, and they're what I would say this, they're chemically controlled, they're electromagnetically controlled, and we have been mind controlled to the point that critical thinking is a very rare thing. By the way, anybody who's been in the military, former law enforcement, active law enforcement, should look at Oath Keepers. Stuart Rhodes is a constitutional scholar. The man is amazing. He's a veteran, and I have a veterans ministry where I help vets financially and single moms, and I got to tell you this, it's tragic, you guys, what we're doing to our veterans. And I'm telling you, when they were made the enemy, and every veteran in the United States did not put on whatever military garb, I knew that the country was toast, because they are the most severe threat, and that's how it works with Department of Homeland Security. The biggest threats are the ones. You think there'll be talk radio? You guys, your show, whatever shows are out there? Only if you toe the line. So it's going to be total aggression, total war. The only thing I see upsetting that is the incredible mercy of the living God who, through earth changes, whatever, they may plan everything, but guess what? They have a wild card, and I believe they're going to see the wild card played. And for the record, it was not the United States that called off the whole combined joint military exercise in the Middle East with Israel. It was Israel. Israel knows they were ultimately going to be betrayed. And ladies and gentlemen, how is it? It's prophetic. It's biblical prophecy. Zechariah 12. Though all the nations of the earth gather against thee. That's God saying He's taken on all comers. You're going to see the most horrific loss of life over the coming years. And what my goal is, through all the stuff in preparedness, get a food storage program, get a water filter. You can call my company, 406-586-4840, and I can put you in touch with some of the best food products in the country, Dry Harvest. If you want to cover your financial basis and your financial bottom, please, you're welcome to email me. I return emails sometimes 24 hours a day. Info, SQ, at stevequayle.com. Because
so, Steve,
again,
you referenced a little while ago the role of the church. You referenced 60 million professing believers in Jesus in the United States. What do you think? Where are these believers? What's going on with the church, meaning the body of believers, relative to the government? And why does it seem that nobody's standing up?
I think it's a misunderstanding of Romans 13, and I think that people don't understand there's a differentiation and a delineation between a godly government that practices liberty and freedom and trusts the people versus one that basically is enslaving the people. And let's face it, a lot of people in the black community, Afro-American community, voted for Barack Obama because he was the first black man to win, or they wanted him to win. That's not the issue. My issue with him is not the skin color. My issue is that when he comes out on YouTube, and you go on YouTube, and talks about all the things he talks about in contempt of God's Word, the Bible, and when you have the pulpit silence, listen, the problem in America, and I got to be specific, it's the preachers. The preachers have become soft and effeminate. I think if people want to see, Jeremiah 51:28 talks about before Babylon was destroyed by the Medo-Persian Empire, the men had basically become a bunch of women. In other words, so few people are willing to stand up. And I have people that call me all the time and say, well, as long as you're alive, things aren't bad. But I know when you get blown away, or Alex Jones gets blown away, or they name some people, then we'll know it's time to run. I say, at that point, it's too late to run. I say, why would you run now when you can stand up now and you can start to hold the elected people accountable? And I got to share this with you. One of my friends, very well placed, former head of the Fed, before Bernanke, actually even before Greenspan. I won't tell you his name, but if you know who was the head of the Federal Reserve before Greenspan, he stood up, he put his arms around my friend, he said, hell, son, we own them all. That's why, as my blessed mother who passed away said, she said, I was a lifelong Republican, Steve, until I realized that the Democrats work the left side of the street, the Republicans work the right side of the street, and they're both whores stealing whatever they can steal from the American people. That's pretty much true, you guys. So the evangelical community is too passive because they've been taught a lukewarm Christianity. If you look at the history of the Revolutionary War, it was men of God who stood up and stood up for freedom.
So the people are gathering to themselves teachers who tickle their ears, essentially.
Absolutely, because again, they wanted to. I mean, Jeremiah. Listen, it was an amazing thing in Jeremiah's day that he absolutely. They said, "Well, Jeremiah, we don't want to hear from God. Tell us good things so we can party hardy." That's my paraphrase. And Jeremiah was called the weeping prophet because it broke his heart at the lack of concern for what's going to happen and what is going down. Have you guys ever thought you'd live to see the days you see right now?
No. Nope. Even 5 years ago, when my eyes weren't quite that open, it's stunning what we're seeing now and the rate at which it's happening.
Steve, I got to say, I believe things now that I never even would have entertained a couple of years ago, and I know they're true now. And I've got to say, that is from listening to people like you on shows like Coast to Coast AM, which has got to be one of the best media sources on the planet right now, and I wonder how long they're going to stay that way.
Well, I don't think it's going to be long because, look, with SOPA, and when I tell you guys about being censored, I mean, I forget how many times I have been censored. Obviously, Coast to Coast has affiliate stations that pick it up, but there are times when somebody in positions of power, if the subject, and I should share this with you, if people think that all this is crazy talk, when I go on and talk about certain, I can check my server, know who's on. When I go on and talk about some things, why is it that 45,000 computers all of a sudden come on my ISP and basically start listening in from everything from the Pentagon to the CIA to the DIA to NSA, every 3-letter, 4-letter, BATF, all these people, and I mean from all over the world, start listening. So I'm not, look, here's the deal. My attitude is this. For pretty much 40 years, I have been saying the same thing. And you read my bio, and I did start the PrEP movement with about 3 other guys in about 1972 in a big way. And so what the attitude that I've tried to make people understand is that if they get knowledge is the best antidote for fear. And anybody who's working and is blessed now to have a job can make priorities. You can buy food that will last for 10, 20 years. You can buy a water filter so you don't have to worry about actually a purifier. There's 2 words, purifier and a filter. They're not interchangeable, but usually a purifier is better than a filter to get out some of these excreted pharmaceuticals. And I don't know if do you guys in the city drink city water, or do you drink only bottled, distilled, or purified water?
Well, actually, where we are, we're lucky enough we have well water.
Okay. Well, that's great.
But it is New Jersey, so...
Yeah, well, then you should also, anybody with wells should have those things periodically tested. And again,
Steve,
it's going to get...
I have been on your website, and you do have Dry Harvest on your website. Can you quickly tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, Dry Harvest is a Canadian food company. They deal in basically incredible stuff like New Zealand canned butter. They started in Canada, moved to the States, in Montana. Years ago, I got out of the Safe Trek, which was a food company, sold them my equipment, and then they came on and said, look, we think the time is right to introduce a different level of food, and basically what they have is like canned meats, butter, cheese, freeze-dried fruits, vegetables, grains, cereal mixes, and all that stuff. And if a person, these, by the way, these prices beat like Costco or Walmart prices, so the person who's buying food today is going to save money if it goes to 40%. By the way, all food last year pretty much went up about 40%. So if you buy $1,000 worth of food this year, by the end of next year, it's probably going to be $1,400. So they can call that phone number on my website for Dry Harvest, and Dry Harvest is probably one of the leaders now in what I would say high calorie count food and real protein. The things that disappear in any type of social disruption are absolutely food and fresh water. And the idea that one part of government says, look, things are going to get really difficult. FEMA says for people to prepare, and then the DHS says people who prepare are terrorists. Well, I got news for you. They cannot hold you in double jeopardy, which in most people's case don't understand that that's not constitutional. But then most people don't even care. So Dry Harvest, in my opinion, is one of the best companies out there because it's got state-of-the-art and fresh food, meaning fresh. When you put something in a nitrogen atmosphere, an oxygen-free environment, you can basically prolong the shelf life up to 20 years. And so, people say, well, I don't want to eat freeze-dried food. Well, I can tell you this, it's better than what you usually see in the fast food joints as far as nutrition. And they really spend a lot of time and effort. Nothing comes in from China. They won't do anything from China. I said, if you guys want me involved in promoting you, nothing from China. So the phone number, if people want to get some information, is 406-587-4390. 406-587-4390. And look at what's happening, you guys, in the supplement business, meaning vitamins, nutritional supplements, health food supplements. Those are going to disappear because you've got the Codex Alimentarius. You've got people basically being told that if you sell raw milk, you'll have a SWAT team show up. You know about that. So what we're seeing is a total breakdown of independence.
We're coming to the end of the show here. We're going to sign off in about 30 seconds. Can you quickly say the name of your website again for our listeners?
Okay, thanks, and thanks. I enjoyed being on you. I apologize for the volume thing. My website is stevequayle.com, SteveQuayle.com, SteveQuayle.com. You can read about my books. By the way, Angel Wars, the one you heard me on with John B. Wells, has become a bestseller now worldwide.
Okay, great. Hey, we've been on with Steve Quayle. Steve, great having you on. The Bear Haggerty Offensive. Billy and Dan out till next week. See you next week.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Bye-bye.